Well, Sarah, thank you so much for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Nathan. Of course, I'm happy to help. So myself, I'm an explorer and journalist, and I spent a lot of my the last 10 years just traveling to remote parts of the world, living with indigenous tribes, um, investigating undercover in slums, surviving some of the most dangerous places on the planet, to help people, to tell people stories, and to shine a light on their way of life and try to improve it. Um, yeah, so that's the bulk of what I've been doing. Is
Yeah,
there anything specific you wanted me to touch on?
well, the idea of kind of walking in other people's shoes that are very different than yourself is probably something that has a lot of opportunity for personal growth and expanding one's view about the world, but is also something that's really hard to do. We get really comfortable in our own shoes in our own life. So can you kind of talk about like one of your experiences maybe going to the slums and how how you were able to create that experience for yourself, uh, what it was like, and then what you learned from it?
Yeah, there's one specific moment that comes to mind, and this was in Ghana. So I was living in Ghana for about a year as an investigative journalist working for a TV channel. And one of my stories was this professional boxer. He was called the Crusader, and he was a two-time Commonwealth boxing champion. And he wanted to win the title again for a third time before he retired, just because he wanted to prove that he could, and he wanted that to be his legacy. Um, that was his ambition. So I was fascinated by him as I got to learn more about him. And I learned that this amazing man could read but couldn't write. He read the Bible, but he couldn't write. He didn't know how to write. So his 11-year-old daughter responded to my text messages when I arranged the initial interview and the meeting. And a lot of my work is very immersive. So, what I do, I literally like to immerse myself in the subject's way of life to understand them better, because I feel that by doing that, you understand how they live, you understand that person, you understand their life choices or their options or limitations and what drives them. And then you can respect all of that, and you can, in my situation, you can capture that story in the most authentic way and do it justice so that it reflects them in the best way, in the most authentic way. You know, I like to be very genuine with my work. So and I do martial arts and I love boxing, so I was really excited about this. Um, I planned a training day with him, filming his life from morning to late evening, and we set up 4 a.m. I think 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. He asked me to meet him at a police station, um, and I was going to his house. But before I went to his house, he said, "Sarah, I start training. If you want to train with me, I can teach you, but we have to start at 4 a.m." I think it was 4 a.m. So I thought, okay, 4 a.m. I'm going to have to schedule my Uber and put 10 alarms on my phone so I wake up on time. Now, I dragged myself to the police station on the other side of the city, and he was with, I think, about 10 other young boys, and they all joined him because he was a role model for the community, and they wanted to train with him, and he taught them boxing and he taught them discipline, and I thought that was really amazing. Anyway, so I thought, right, I'm the only girl, so I have to represent and keep up with these guys. So we ran, but as we were running, more people joined us from the neighborhood. And then I realized this neighborhood was a really fit neighborhood because everyone was getting up early, running and jogging and doing all sorts of workouts. And they were joining him as well. So he didn't just run, he would run and then he would stop and do a set of workouts, intense workouts, or uh, punches or jabs, or he had a very specific routine and it was very hardcore. So I managed to survive that session. It was for about 2 or 3 hours he trained. It ended with boxing and I think a bit of sparring at the end. And I love boxing and sparring, so it was great. Anyway, so after that, he opened up his shop. So he took me to the shop and he sells beer, alcohol, juice, water, and it's one of his streams of income. And so I was sitting there helping or watching him and helping him as well, just watching the customers come in and greet him, and everyone really respected him. And then he had to close the shop, go home, and I met his beautiful wife and his kids. And he lived in the slums, in a very humble home. I don't think there was any furniture in the living room. There was a kitchen, there was a living room, there was a bedroom, and I think the children were very young. I think under 12, under 11. And then he took me into his room and he showed me all of his trophies, and he showed me his championship belt, his, the title he won from the Commonwealth, and just all these trophies and medals and belts. And I was in awe. Thought, wow, this man has achieved so much in his life. It's incredible. Um, and he just told me it was all about discipline and drive. And not, not only that, he also was an inspiration to the community because wanted to he wanted to introduce better sanitation. And so he would just clean up the streets and get members of the neighborhood to join him to clean up the waste and make it a better, make it better and cleaner um, for everyone. And he was trying to get the waste companies and the recycling companies to come in and take the waste away. And he was just trying to do so many things to make it a better place for everyone. This guy was incredible. And he just lived in a very humble home. I was blown away. Um, why am I telling you this? It doesn't matter where you come from. It matters who you are inside. The drive that you have, what you can accomplish. It's not dictated by where you come from. This guy could have been living in London, in a skyscraper building. That's probably what we associate with champions and those who achieve a lot. But that's not true. So I learned a lot. I just have a lot of love and respect for people, regardless of who they are, where they're from. Um, my indigenous tribe as well in the Amazon rainforest. I lived I was in the Ecuadorian Amazon jungle, and then I returned to the Brazilian Amazon jungle 2 years ago. And I had very different experiences, but essentially it's pretty much the same. You connect with people using universal communication methods such as a smile, a laugh. The expressions on our faces are universal. They don't have a distinct language, it's one language. So I just think communication is very important, knowing how to speak with people and just connect with them. Uh, Connection gets you so far in life, in danger, in adventures, in business, anywhere really. So yeah, that's the story I wanted to share.
That's really amazing. And I think there's so much in that we could probably talk for hours just about just those experiences. But one kind of observation I've heard some people make is that people are rational and illogical. and that they're unpredictable and that they don't make sense. But actually, it's been my observation, it's just the opposite. People are very logical and rational. It's just they live in very different worlds with very different views of the world, with very different ideas on what is possible. And if you know what their motivation is, where they, kind of like the world in which they live in, then you can really understand why they behave the way that they do. And based upon, kind of working across so many different cultures and peoples, um, would you kind of agree with the idea that people really are behaving in a rational way to the world in which they live in? Or am I am I the one that has the misconception and people really are
That's a
irrational?
very good question and interesting question, because I've been also exploring this and understanding this for myself. And I do believe that psychology has a lot to do with it. So your experiences and your exposures of life shape you, and your perspectives on the world, on other people or other cultures. And that's done from a very young age. Same with me. My experiences and my exposures of life shape my belief system and my values and how I see the world or how I interact with other people. So I think it's a lot more deeper than that. There's no simple answer for that. It's individual. It depends on the individual and what their background is or was, because it can be changed if they decide they want to change it. So irrational behavior usually, I think, comes from my partner's a hypnotherapist, so we talk about a lot of this. And we do lots of shadow work as well to understand where certain reactions come from, or behaviors or phobias, or so this is something that I've been working on extensively. It's really interesting. So irrational behavior, it could be something from the past that was similar triggered them to react that way. Something happened to them, like maybe an unpleasant or traumatic experience from whatever it is that they have an irrational behavior reaction to. Something must have happened before um, to cause that. So it's about going to the root, finding out what that was and why, and then replacing the belief um, and therefore replacing the reaction, because it's all in the mind. It's much deeper. It's much deeper than just words, or politics. You have to really investigate to understand where it comes from and why it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, as you were talking, I was thinking that one example that might be really accessible to a lot of people in the Western world is like PTSD and this kind of irrational response to common everyday sounds by people who've been in, kind of um, conflict zones where those sounds are actually survival cues that they've highly tuned themselves to respond to kind of stay alive. And it's kind of moving that into a different context. It looks irrational, but if you knew their past or their past experiences, it would seem very, very rational that they would behave the way they
Exactly.
do.
Yeah, you have to understand what that person experienced to understand why they are the way they are. If you can't do that, then you won't have empathy, because you can't expect everyone to be just like you. That the world won't be what it is if everyone was an exact carbon copy of you. Everyone's different, and that's beautiful. That's what makes the world a beautiful place. But you have to understand, if something bothers you, just understand where it's coming from. If you understand the root of the problem, then you'll have more empathy. And I think empathy is really important, especially nowadays.
Now, we talk about the value we hope to get out of space exploration, and you talked about how everybody's different. They have different life experiences, different what have you. I think if you move that over to sort of exploration, discovery, and innovation, so much of that's driven by like flashes of insights and gut feelings that then we go about systematically proving out and exploring. Like, and while so many of our lives are different in so many different ways here on Earth, there's a lot of commonality in terms of our physical experience with like physical forces. Um, like we all experience pretty much a 24-hour day unless you live above or below the Arctic Circle, in which case that might be different. And we all experience like 1 g of gravity pulling us to the Earth. And we all, except for the people who live very high on mountains, what have you, experience pretty much one atmosphere of pressure on their body.
Mm.
And I think one of the things I hope to get out of sending humans to other places in the solar system is to have people kind of freed of those commonalities. And maybe there's things that are obvious about our universe that the moment we kind of step out of where we are, well, maybe that frees us from the blinders that we don't even know are there. And I was wondering, based upon kind of your experiences in terms of, as you've been exploring kind of like the human condition, if you think that's a reasonable expectation.
What's a reasonable expectation? Sorry.
Oh, that as we send humans to the moon, where they'll experience like 1/7 gravity, a 29-hour day, and they're in a completely artificial environment. Um, and as we send humans to like Mars, and they have like a 24.5-hour day, 1/3 gravity and what have you. And as humans start observing the universe from different conditions, that we open ourselves up to having a whole bunch of new flashes of insight, gut feelings, and what have you that wouldn't be possible if we all stuck right here on the earth.
I love that question. That's, yeah, I do think that's reasonable expectation, but I think um, you can make that the norm. You can make that familiar by exposing yourself to different situations and adapting. What did Charles Darwin say? Survival of the fittest.
Yeah, it's
So
not the fastest, it's not the strongest, it's the one that's quickest to adapt.
yeah, adaptation. Why do you think Homo sapiens have outlived our cousins, the Neanderthals? Survival of the fittest. So I think if you can adapt and understand, I do think speed is an element to be considered as well, because if you adapt fast compared to someone who adapts slow, then out you outdo them. So I think adaptation is so important. And training for that and we're doing a lot of that today than ever before, than 10 years ago, was traveling the world, understanding other cultures and other parts of the world, experiencing other terrains, deserts, mountains, jungles, um, snow. So it's so important. And astronauts have their training as well in various conditions, depending on what their mission is. So, yeah, I think adaptation is key, and that would prepare anyone for something like that.
So kind of returning back to the moon theme, I was wondering when you heard that we were planning to send astronauts back to the moon in 2024, if that's something um, like, how did you learn about that? When did you learn about it? That type of thing.
Oh, I follow NASA on their socials, so that's where I learned about it, and I got really excited because I love space. I love space, and I'm aching for the day we can venture deeper out into space, and explore to understand the universe better, to understand what else is there. You know, Maybe I'm specifically interested in seeing if we encounter alien life. Um, yeah, recently NASA published that they found microorganisms on Venus, so signs of life. That's interesting. They found, was it water particles on the moon, and they're sending people out there for scientific missions in the 2024 expedition. So I'm really eager to learn about what they discover and what we can learn about the universe beyond the Earth. It's just, there are so many galaxies and solar systems, and therefore planets and moons, and we're just planet Earth. So imagine what else exists out there. We can't be the only beings in this universe. And I'm curious to learn more with scientific research and exploration, obviously. So I'm not woo woo.
Um, yeah, well, would you believe that the vast majority of people I talk to now it's changed a lot since March because I've had a I wasn't planning to interview any space people, and then I've kind of interviewed a considerable number of space people since March because of
Yeah.
having to move online. But would you believe that even the vast majority of people I've talked to did not know that we're planning to go back to the moon?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Why? Why do you think that is?
Um, I think it speaks of many different things. One is the way we get our news. Most people do not read newspapers or watch the nightly TV, but they get their news online. And in the online format, it's a highly personalized um, type of news. So if you're somebody that's expressed an interest in the past to, say, gardening, you'll see a lot of articles about gardening. But if you expressed an interest in the past to, say, politics, you'll see a lot about politics. But if you've never ever shown an interest in the past in space, then you may never see uh, um, space-related articles. So I think that's number one. I think number two is NASA has come up with many plans in the past that haven't gone anywhere. And it takes energy to get excited, right? Do you want to get excited about believable things that you think are really going to happen? And I think a lot of people may dismiss the news thinking, they've always been talking about doing things like that and they haven't happened. You had the vision for space exploration back during George W. Bush's thing. So those are my two thoughts on why.
That's interesting. We do receive a lot of news online these days. I have two TVs in this house and I haven't turned one on. So I think the way media is distributing its information is also changing to match that. So it's also down to people's interests. So, how many people interested in space would follow the news avidly? Equally like myself, I love space. I'm excited about space. I want to go to space. So, I have to try my best to stay up to date with all the updates from NASA and European Space Agency and various others, SpaceX. That's really exciting. The Dragon landing was so interesting. I watched that live. I loved it. Really loved it. So we're making progress as time goes on, and that's a positive sign that we can only get better in the future. We can get closer towards that dream of deep space exploration. Um, yeah, and then I think the more we achieve in space as a global community, because there are various other space agencies around the world. And I spoke recently to the founder of an aerospace company, a very young man, only 22 years old, in the Philippines. And that caused the Philippines government to set up the Philippine Space Agency. And he's become the Philippines version of Tesla, SpaceX, and NASA in one. And that's really exciting. They want to provide a space junk cleaning service. So I'm just I'm just very hopeful and also optimistic that deep exploration will happen in my lifetime, you know. And so I do believe it. And it's not just a dream without action. There are lots of experts behind this mission, highly trained, highly skilled. There's science behind this mission. People are working really hard to make it happen, and I believe that we will go.
Me too. At least I hope so. Otherwise, this project's going to get really, really kind of
No,
crazy over the
a
next
lot of
few
money
years.
has gone, you know, a lot of money has gone into it. They've obviously hired the best engineers, the best people, and they're working together with various partners. So this is going to be very successful. We're going to have a base on the moon, and then I think we'll start colonizing Mars or Venus, depending on which comes first. Possibly Mars, because there's been a lot of um, press mostly about Mars, a lot of hype about Mars. Yeah, being the first planet to explore after the moon.
Now, most of the people, after I tell them we're going to the moon in 2024, are fairly excited about it, um, are kind of neutral. I've, we're also sending the first woman to the moon, which some people are particularly excited about.
No, I'm excited about that. I wanted to be the first woman on the moon. That's fine. Another time, another planet, maybe. Anyway,
Exactly. Um, but not everybody is universally excited about it. Some people bring up the same argument of, why are we paying so much to send just a few people to like the moon whenever we have problems like, and you could put whatever you want here, global climate change, ecological problems, poverty, social justice, what have you. And um, how, what's your view on that whenever people kind of bring up an argument like that?
I've had I've had a couple of conversations around this, and what I do is I always try to understand why the other person is saying that, and they do have a point. You know, money. If governments have access to money, we should focus on the problems that are that we're facing here on planet Earth, because planet Earth is a spaceship, you know, and we humans are its inhabitants. And there are people dying of hunger, don't have clean water, don't have access to good sanitation. And I think those things need to be eradicated so everyone can live in harmony and have access to our basic needs. However, I do also believe that deep space exploration, preparation, and missions are going to advance our species, our understanding of the universe, and that might help us further as a civilization in many ways. And just bring so many things, so many benefits that we don't even know about yet, that could enhance our lives, you know. And I'm with Cures for Humanity, and they're actually we're launching the magazine on November the 1st. So the co-founder Salt Cozart has teamed up with Martin Luther King III, so Martin Luther King's son, to end global hunger. Because if you can end global hunger, imagine what that would mean for the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't seem like a technical problem. Like, I mean, it seems like we have enough food or could produce enough food to literally feed everybody in the world. It seems like some type of social engineering type problem in terms of actually getting it to them.
What do you think? What do you think it could be?
Oh, why people in the world are hungry?
What do you think the social engineering problem is, and how do you think that can be rectified?
Yeah, um, that is a very challenging question. I I tend to think that, I mean, first of all, we need to make sure um, we try to control global conflict as much as possible. It's very difficult to deal with food whenever you're dealing with bullets and landmines and things like that. Um, so I think that's something that, since the US and a lot of Western countries are responsible for producing these weapons, we also have a responsibility for kind of ensuring they're not used to kind of make other people's lives miserable. So that's one aspect. But then the second place, I think it's about free exchange of information and basically getting the technology to them, helping to cultivate entrepreneurs and people with ideas on how to improve their societies, like the rocket engineer that you're talking about in the Philippines. Um, can you imagine having people like that addressing all sorts of different issues all around the world? How to create that sense of empowerment and enablement, and kind of uh, ultimately the people are the solution to the problem. It's just about kind of uh, making sure that they see themselves as a solution, and then they have access to the technology and resources to kind of go and pursue that. I think that's a large part
knowing
of it.
how to knowing how to deliver that solution, because the how is really important. The how is the engineering that you speak of that we may be lacking, but we will have very soon in the future. Yeah, well, I know that we have it right now, and I can't wait to share it with you all. Yeah, it's going to be solved. The future is looking bright.
Yeah, it's whatever we make of it, right? It's a collective choice.
Well, that's true too. If you want to live in, if you want to live in a tree, you can. If that's what you want life to be for you, that can be life for you. If you want to,
Oh, I
that's
wouldn't I wouldn't knock the tree houses. I've seen some pretty fancy tree houses, at least pictures of them.
that's my dream, a nice tree house.
Um,
Maybe on another planet would be awesome.
exactly. Um, so whenever you think of the future of humanity,
Yeah.
like 500 years out in the future, what is your best hope for what it looks like?
So we have ended global hunger. Everyone has access to clean water. Everyone has access to sustainable organic food. Everyone has sustainable housing. There's no fossil fuels. Probably in the next 10 years, there's no fossil fuels. I hope earlier than that. um, Everyone learns to live with love and empathy and respect. Um, yeah, everyone has a positive mind so that they can make healthy decisions. And we're focusing on advancing our species, working together, collaborating. It's a global community, and I just see more peace in the world. Yeah.
And what do you, to turn around the previous question on you, what do you see as the path to that world?
The path to that world. So again, Cures for Humanity are providing that, but there are various other organizations who are working really, really hard to achieve that. And so the more we support them, or we join them, or we may have our own individual acts of kindness that can make impact. And the more we do that together, we make a huge difference. One person can make a difference, but when you combine that with millions of people, imagine what we can do in the world. When you make someone's life better, your life becomes better. I say that a lot because it's true.
Yeah, it's amazing. If we spent maybe 1 hour, I mean, it's like I think there's like what 7 billion people in the world right now,
Yeah,
more.
yeah.
I mean, if each of them gave an hour towards solving a world problem, that'd be 7 billion hours. It's just how do you like organize that and kind of make it happen?
There's so many things you could do. I mean, I've gone sustainable with the energy that I'm using um, in the house. And everyone recycles. Making ethical choices, things you buy, how you live. Sometimes it's not always possible, because the options are so vast. They're not they aren't available to us, but you have to know where to find them and how to find them. So once it becomes the mass, once it becomes more mainstream, people would have more access to it. So if big companies transitioned to sustainable fuel, if all companies transitioned to sustainable fuel and renewable energy, imagine what would happen. If cars did, if various aspects of our life, if the manufacturer decided to become sustainable, then the consumer would have no choice but to buy a sustainable product or service. So I think it comes from the source. It has to be rectified from the source. Once you change the source, it has a knock-on impact on everything else and everyone else. That's what I think.
And you mentioned you wanted to go to space, and you even talked about potentially that you wanted to be like the first woman on the moon if you could have, or could be, or on Mars,
Or Venus.
or Venus.
I like Venus. Greek mythology. Yeah. So yeah, I'd love to go to space, and I will go to space. I started during the COVID pandemic. I decided to focus on what's my ultimate dream, what are my ultimate goals. I did Chris Hadfield's Space Exploration Masterclass. He's now following me on LinkedIn. I
That's
did
awesome.
sent his company a message for advice. They responded, and then he wishing me luck with my space mission and dreams. And then I think it was a few weeks later, he was following me on LinkedIn and was like, "Oh, he accepted my request. It's nice." So I did a video about my space dreams for Careers in Space, and it's on their blog. Um, and I spoke to a NASA expert who worked for the Jet Propulsion Lab, and I'm just speaking with various people who are already in the industry. I'm trying to understand as much as I can about how the industry works and to prepare myself, to arm myself with knowledge and information that I need as a foundation. I also started an aeronautical engineering course on the Harvard University website, and you know it's great. I never knew I could understand maths that way. But it's great. I'm enjoying it. It's challenging at times, but it's great. And yeah, physically I try to stay fit. I'm looking forward to once we have more access to fight clubs, because for me, I love martial arts. That's how I like to stay fit. Um, I go running. I try to go every once a week in the park nearby, and you know, just doing basic things to prepare myself. And then once I'm ready, I'd love to enroll into proper training. Like once I'm ready, I don't know when, but I'm planning. This is my baby stages, beginning stages of understanding how everything works, and then hopefully I'll launch myself into it when the time comes.
Have you heard of Space Hero?
No, what's that?
And so it's a reality TV show that's in the work right now. I think we're about, I think there's still a few hundred days away from really formalizing everything. But the idea is to do a global kind of contest with like a reality TV show. And the winner of that would go to the International Space Station for 10 days.
That's so cool. Wow, that's incredible. No, I haven't heard of it. I'd love
Yeah,
to watch it. Just send me a link.
I'll send you a link. There was just some articles about it a couple of weeks ago, and they still appear to. But I know some of the people involved, like Axiom Aerospace, is going to be the company that's responsible for the astronaut training and the logistics of getting the person to the International Space Station and back. And they're a real company here in Houston. Um, and you know that they actually have a contract with SpaceX for a private Dragon crew
You're
mission.
in Houston, Texas.
I am, yeah.
That's so cool. I love it.
Yeah, and you know, one of their kind of like speakers, Moraba Jah, he's a professor at the University of Texas in Austin. He's an astrodynamicist, and he was our guest speaker last month at our North Houston Space Society chapter. So I know he's a legit person. So I feel like this is a really real thing, and you know, if they could get enough interest, they could get the sponsors to get the money to put together the show to make it happen. So I hope to find out what all the uh, what all the challenges are, because it seems like it'd be so fun to be a part of.
Yeah, I'm learning myself, you know. This is a whole new adventure. This is a whole new level of exploration for me. After exploring various terrains on the planet Earth, um, you know, I always knew I wanted to explore space, but I didn't know if it was ever going to feel like it could be reality. But now I feel like it can, and so I want to make it happen. And like I said, I'm in the early stages, so I'm still learning. I'm still learning and being mentored and guided, and yeah, that hopefully, and I know I'll get there. I just need all the right tools.
Absolutely. And I wanted to let you know about one other thing. This is a micro SD card, and
Okay.
I'm planning to take all these videos, put them on a micro SD card, and I'll be sending it to Astrobotic, which is sending a probe to the moon next year. And that card will be on the moon. So your video will be part of an artifact on the moon that some future uh, generations could potentially recover and get a glimpse on what humanity was like before the new space age.
That's so interesting. That's great.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
So, yeah, you're welcome for sure. And yeah, no, it's pretty exciting, kind of, to be able to be connected with like that mission would be neat. Well, I really appreciate your time. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
No, no, I've really enjoyed this conversation with you, and I've also myself learned a lot. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, I really appreciate your time and being so generous with kind of your views and stories and everything. And well, I hope you have a good rest of your day and look forward to staying in contact.
I will. Please do stay in touch. I'm going to go and cook my lunch.
Okay,
Have an amazing day.
you too. Bye bye.
Bye, London. Bye bye.